What is going on, everybody? This is Mike from The Last Corvette. So I'm currently driving my 2020 Chevy Equinox all-wheel drive 1.5 turbo. I've done several videos about this vehicle, upgrades, small repairs, whatever, right? But one thing that drove me to making this video is I'm all about service, and yes, this vehicle is still for sale and eventually will sell once the economy gets a little bit better. Interest rates are not, 55,000%, but I always maintain and service my vehicle. And I was recently doing a transmission service on this Equinox, and this will cover like 6-speed, 9-speed jam transmissions. And to my shock, I came across some horrible videos of people trying to explain and teach others on how to change transmission fluid in these newer transmissions. Now remember, these newer transmissions obviously use synthetic fluids just like the engines do, but they also don't have a dipstick. Let's say like older transmissions or like your engine, okay? There's no level. There's a special way to check the proper level in your transmission. And I came across pretty much 80% of all videos out there either had a wrong way to check for proper transmission fluid level, a wrong way to refill the fluid, or just wrong altogether. It is just, crazy. So if you want to learn how to properly service your Equinox, GMC Terrain, Acadia, Traverse, 6-speed, 9-speed transmissions, watch this video. If you want to ruin your transmission, ruin your day, ruin your week, month, year, ruin your bank account, then go ahead and watch other videos. Now, one thing that I'm going to do in this video, not only am I going to explain what to do in this first part, but then I'm also going to include a second part where I walk you guys through all of the major points that you're going to be working with. And I'm also going to include pictures of products, of transmission fluid, color, you name it, I'm going to have it covered. And we're also going to touch on the oil change that I did like a week ago, 2 weeks ago on this Equinox as well. Oil changes are very straightforward. Like I said, you do have a measuring tool, which is your dipstick. But regardless, you still want to do it right and at right intervals, and that is usually 3,000 to 5,000 miles. People forget that these vehicles are pre-programmed usually to 5,000 or 7,500 miles in between oil changes. But if you drive a lot, harsh conditions, or as they call it, HD, meaning that let's say you tow a lot, or you're like me, you drive 50 plus miles a day between highways and main roads, you definitely want to stick to 3,000 to 5,000. That way the vehicle will run for a long time. Now, going back to the transmission, GM, in their service manual, they state that the transmission fluid should be drained and filled every 45,000 miles. Not flushed, drained and filled. I never believed in flushes, and specifically on higher mile or higher mileage vehicles. When you have higher miles, you don't want to do that. And of course, you got other people that say, well, why would you do that? I only drive, a couple of miles a day, and, I can definitely make, up to 100,000 miles without replacing the transmission fluid. And the answer to that is probably yes, you can, but once you cross over 100,000 miles, you're going to start having transmission issues. And once you start having, either shift issues or slip, you're done. Changing the transmission fluid is not going to help you. It's not going to solve anything. You're going to be looking at either A, rebuilding a transmission, getting a used transmission with a bunch of red flags and question marks, or getting a new transmission, and that's very, very expensive. All right, so first thing is first, when it comes to changing your transmission fluid in newer vehicles, you never ever want to start with your vehicle in some kind of unlevel position. Try to keep it level. On these Equinoxes, this is not a big SUV with huge ground clearance, but even a bigger guy like me can climb under the vehicle and reach the drain plug with no car ramps or car jacks or jack stands or anything like that. Literally, it's right there. It's right on the bottom of your drain pan. First thing you want to do, you'll see that the transmission drain plug sticks out probably about half an inch or so, meaning that exposed threads. take yourself a marker like a Sharpie or a paint marker and make a mark that's flush with basically the top, or I should say the bottom of your transmission pan. That way when you put the plug back in, you're going to put in the same position and essentially the same torque and the same thread count. When it comes to draining your fluids, yes, it is best to warm up your vehicle, kind of agitate everything, and you don't need to have it like super hot, but at least run it for like 5 minutes or something like that, and then stick your drain pan under the vehicle, make sure it's flat, and drain it. Another thing that I came across, which blows my mind, is when people try to measure transmission fluid. That's because there's no a dipstick on these transmissions. There is a fill cap still right on top of the transmission, but if you remove it, it's just a hole. It's just a fill hole with a cap. And people try to measure transmission fluid, what they removed, what they took out, using measuring cups and other various methods that are messy and take time. Why would you do that? The reason they're doing it is because they don't know how to properly service these transmissions, like I said, 6 speeds, 9 speeds, or any other transmissions, honestly, that are, newer. On top of it, what if your transmission was serviced before you bought the vehicle? Let's say you bought the vehicle used. What if somebody overfilled it or underfilled your transmission? How do you know that 2 quarts to removed is enough? How do you know that 5 or 6 quarts to removed is enough or too much? Because they don't know what they're doing, and that's going to lead to some problems. So let's drain the transmission fluid. You drain it. Now, a great rule of thumb is this: if your transmission holds 10 quarts, 11 quarts of transmission fluid, you're going to only drain half. That's just the way it works. You ask yourself why? Because some of the transmission fluid is going to be kept in the valve body, and most of it is going to be kept in the torque converter itself. Now, the second follow-up question I always get is, well, what if I want to do a complete change? That's very simple. Don't wait 45,000 miles. Wait 3,000 to 5,000 miles, dump it again, refill it, and now your transmission is going to be like 98, 99% new, fresh. What I removed out of this vehicle, or I should say what I drained out of this vehicle. Now, this vehicle was a 2-year lease, and then it was bought, and then not even a year later, it was repossessed, and that's when I got it. It had just over 50,000 miles. They recommended it 45. I knew for a fact that the transmission fluid was never touched on this vehicle, and you will see in the pictures that this transmission fluid was black. And yes, it was black, and towards the very end, it started to clear up, but regardless, it was due. Now, once you drain it, you're going to put your drain plug back in. You're going to put at least 4 or 5 quarts into your transmission. You're going to fill your vehicle before you even attempt to start it. Believe it or not, blew my mind. Somebody was doing a video on YouTube. They drained the fluid, they started the vehicle, and then they started putting transmission fluid through a funnel. And you do need a longer funnel, but I'll show you pictures of what I have, where you can have a short funnel with a hose, but if that pops off, you will make a mess. But they started filling up the transmission while the engine was running, while the transmission was running. And guess what happens? You're going to ruin your transmission by doing that. You're going to ruin the pump, and no, you don't do that. I only found 2 videos, or maybe 1 video on YouTube that was properly done on a 6-speed transmission. And that was done at a shop, at a service center, because guess what? They know what they're doing. It just blows my mind when people do that. So anyway, you're going to refill your transmission. You're going to put 4 or 5 quarts back in, so a gallon or just over a gallon. You're going to start your vehicle then, and you can leave your fill cap off, okay? Not a big deal. You can leave it off. Then you're going to start your vehicle, and you're going to clock your steering wheel to the right. So essentially, your driver's side tire is going to be inward, okay? And that's going to expose your bolt or your drain plug. It's not really a drain, but it's a level plug that checks for proper transmission fluid level in 6 speeds and 9 speed GM transmissions. Now, it looks identical to the drain plug. It's just located on the side of the transmission. And don't ever try to remove it with the engine off, because you're going to essentially do the same thing. You're going to drain out transmission fluid, create a huge mess, and also waste money. So once you get your vehicle up and running, clock your steering wheel all the way hard to the right, then you're going to take your shifter, go from park to reverse, hold it there for about 10 seconds, neutral, hold it, drive, hold it, L, hold it, and then you're going to go upwards towards park and repeat the same process. Then you're going to bump it into reverse, then you're going to bump it and drive again. You can actually even like shift the vehicle a little bit if you want. And then the most important part, you're going to wait till the vehicle is at full operating temperature. You see that on Equinoxes? That's full operating temperature. The reason you want to do that is because you want to make sure that the fluid is running, the fluid is hot, your pump is running, and everything is expanded basically, right, at full volume and at full temperature. If you try to do it at cold temp, I mean, you could, but it's best by the book to do it like anywhere from 180 to 206. Now, on these Equinoxes, if this was like a pickup truck, Silverado, or SUV, you would have most of the time a readout of your temp, transmission temp. On Equinoxes, you don't. So if you don't have a scan tool like I do, just run your vehicle until you reach operating temperature, your engine operating temperature, and then you're good to go. So what you're going to do at that point is you're going to remove that secondary plug, that's your level plug, and you're going to remove it slowly, have a pan under the side of the transmission where the plug is. You're going to remove it, and it's very, very simple. If you remove that plug and there's no fluid coming out, guess what? You're going to add more fluid until you get a nice little steady trickle out of that port. Once you get to that trickle, put the plug back in, shut the vehicle off, and you're done. Button everything up, you're good to go for another 45,000 miles. Or let's say another 5,000 to 10,000 miles if you want to do a complete flush. If you take that plug out and you get a steady trickle flow right away, you're done. Put it back in and you're done. If you remove it and you get a steady flow, not a trickle, if you get a steady flow, that means it's overfilled, and you're going to drain it out until you get a steady trickle. And then once you do that, you put it back in and you're done. That's all you do. Maybe make a note somewhere in the vehicle that you actually service your transmission, but that's the proper way of doing it. So what I'm going to do from this point on is I'll show you all of the contact points, all of the areas you're going to be working with, show you both of the plugs, your drain plug, your basically level check plug, and I will also touch on the engine oil. Engine oil, once again, is 0W20 full synthetic. I use Valvoline or Mobil 1, my preference. I always say, regardless of what you use, just use it and actually keep your intervals consistent. When it comes to the transmission fluid, I also use Valvoline. It is Dextron 6, that's by the book. And yes, utilizing something that's non-OEM, as long as it's to spec, as long as it meets or exceeds, it's totally fine. You'll never have issues. So next is the walk around. I'll show you all of the points, and then at the end of the video, I'll include all of the pictures. That way you can use those for reference, and don't watch any other videos. What is going on, everybody? This is Mike from The Last Corvette. So in this portion of the video, I'm going to show you all of your fill points and also drain points. We'll start with the transmission, then we'll move to the engine oil, or the engine side. Engine is going to be very, very simple. So if you're looking at the driver's side of your Equinox, so it could be a 6-speed, a 9-speed, same thing with Traverses and Acadias. You'll see your battery, you'll see your fuse block, you'll see your computer and your harnesses. If the transmission fluid has never been serviced, or I should say the cap, the fill cap for your transmission has never been off, the harnesses are going to be kind of pushed out and blocking essentially the view of the fill cap. Now remember, as I explained in the video, this cap here does not have a basically a stick or a dipstick, right, measuring device. That's located on the side of the transmission that tells you exactly where the transmission fluid level is while the engine is running. So if you look over here, now once again, this is where I'm at. I'm going to move these harnesses out of the way, and what I'm going to try to do is set my phone down and then zoom in on it, and there it is right there. Okay, so you can kind of get out of the way. There's plenty of room to get your hands on, and it does unscrew. It doesn't pull off. It unscrews counterclockwise and clockwise, obviously, to screw it back in. I would say probably 5 full turns or something like that. One thing to watch is if the engine is hot, just let it cool off a little bit, because you can leave the cap, the fill cap off the transmission off while your engine is running, and obviously while you're checking your transmission fluid level. That's very important. So that's really it. That's just the fill port. It's not a check port. When it comes to the transmission fluid, I will show you guys in pictures that you can pause exactly what I use, but I already kind of brought up the Valvoline and Dextron 6. That's what this vehicle calls for. And show you a picture also of the long funnel. So essentially you're going to feed the funnel kind of in between the engine block and your computer, and it fits in really nicely. If you don't have a long funnel, buy one. I would recommend doing it. It's better to use something that's one piece, or you can potentially just use a shorter funnel and hose. Just make sure it's fully seated and feed the hose into the fill port. All right, so when it comes to draining your transmission, and while I'm on the ground, because I want to do this one time, I'm going to show you where the drain plug is, right there. Let me zoom in on it again. And as you can see that black? That's actually a paint marker. So what I was explaining in the first portion of the video is, before you remove yours, just make a mark. So cover the threads between the bottom of your transmission, and then obviously in between the exposed threads. That way when you put it back in, you know that it's not leaking and it's fully seated. Now, of course, if you look over to the passenger side, you will notice the drain plug for your oil. My phone is having a really hard time zooming in. So there you go. Here's the drain plug right there. And the easiest thing is, here is the filter. So everything is right there. Makes it really easy. You don't even have to move the pan. Obviously drain the oil out first, and then take care of your filter, and then put the filter back on. Obviously always lube the seal. And then this drain plug, as I said, does have a seal as well. So every second or third oil change, just do yourself a favor and buy a new one. That way you don't have any leaks. But yeah, looks pretty clean, looks pretty fresh here. All right, so let's get back to the main important thing. So you're gonna drain the transmission fluid, and I will show you exactly the color and how mine looked after 50-some thousand miles. So as I stated before, you're going to drain it. Usually takes about 20 minutes to kind of fully come to a trickle, and then you're going to refill your transmission. You can put 5 quarts in. It's not going to hurt nothing, because you're going to check the level, and like I said, you can leave your fill cap off, and then you're going to start your engine, as I stated, or start your car essentially, and let it warm up. If you don't have a scan tool, just go ahead and bring the vehicle up to normal operating temperature, usually within 5 to 10 minutes. That's going to take place. Now, if you watch other videos, you're going to notice that they're using the speed sensor, which is further forward. This here on your transmission is actually your port. As you can see, it's a very similar plug, or a screw, bolt, whatever you want to call it. That is actually your transmission fluid level port. So this is what you're going to remove while the vehicle is running, the engine is running, okay? And after you fill it up with 5 quarts or 4 quarts, whatever, of transmission fluid, you're going to run it through the gears. Then you're going to slowly unscrew this port here with the let's say a drain pan right under the control arm, and you're going to remove it. And as I stated, you're going to check and see, make sure there is a trickle. If there is a slow trickle or like an overflow condition, basically there's a little bit of transmission fluid leaking out, you're full. If nothing is coming out, go ahead and start adding a little bit of transmission fluid at a time until you see a trickle from this port here. and obviously make sure the engine is running the entire time. And then, like I said, if you remove it and you see a heavy flow, just let it drain out. That means it's overfilled, and you are good to go. And once you get that little trickle, just put it back in. And same thing, you can put a mark on it or just get it nice and snug. But you can see this is basically just right under, in between, I should say, the front axle, driver's side axle, and then your outer steering end link, right actually in front of the boot right there on the side of the transmission. 6-speed and 9-speed transmissions have the same thing. It's not in the front. You don't need to remove any of the liner. People are doing this wrong. It's right there. Okay, and once you get that all squared away, you just basically put the fill cap back on, and you're good to go. And you know, if you want to do a complete flush, like I said, just wait till your next oil change, repeat the process, and you're good to go for another 50,000 miles. As far as the oil, very simple. 0W20, your dipstick here. Obviously this is a lot easier because you do have an actual dipstick to check your engine oil level. And that's really it, guys. I'm going to include all of the pictures of not only the oil, locations, stuff like that, product used. And of course, remember, when you do it yourself, it's a lot cheaper. Between oil and transmission fluid, I paid $135 altogether. The only thing that's left, and you know, this all depends on timing, but I do need to change the gear lube in the transfer case, also in the rear diff. They hold about a quart or under a quart each. I'll make a video later on that. Obviously, if you have a front wheel drive, you just worry about the transmission and the engine oil. If you have an all-wheel drive model like this one, you want to do your transfer case and the rear diff. But once again, it all depends on how much you use it. If you use all-wheel drive, function a lot, but most of the time you can actually go about 80,000 miles before you have to worry about the gear loops side of things. But it's 75W90. That's the fluid you're going to use. Once again, fully synthetic. The brand could be GM or anything else that you guys trust. And yeah, like I said, the most important thing is obviously just doing your service intervals on time, and you're going to save a lot of money, and the vehicle obviously will run for a long time without having any issues. Talk to you guys later.